Today I've been asked to identify the key features from the graph that I've been given. The first thing I notice by looking at this graph is that this is a cubic graph, which means that this is something that has an x raised to the third power. Alright, the first thing I've been asked to do is to find the x-intercepts. So the x-intercepts are all the places where the graph crosses the x-axis. So I see that it crosses here, which is -2, 0, and here, which is 0, 0, and here, which is 3, 0. Alright, now I've been asked to find the y-intercepts, and the y-intercept is also located here at 0, 0. So I want you guys to note that a graph can share an x and y intercept. Okay, so the next thing I've been asked to do is to look at the end behavior as a graph. So I see that as x is getting smaller, what is y doing? Well, I see that y is going off the left end of the graph. So as x gets smaller, y gets smaller. So I'm going to write -infinity. I've also been asked to say what's happening on the right side of the graph. So what I see here is I see that as x gets bigger, y gets bigger. So I'm going to put infinity there. All right, next I've been asked to identify the intervals of increasing and decreasing. So I want to remind you that increasing are all the places where the graph increases. So what I see here is I see that my graph increases to right here, and then at this point right here, it turns around. Okay, and then it decreases, and then at this point right here, it turns around and it goes back up. So I see what it's doing on the graph, but now I'm going to give it a name. So all the intervals for increasing is from off of the graph, which is -infinity, to -1. And then it also increases from 2 to +infinity. Okay. Now the places that it decreases are those places where I drew the graph red. So I can see that it decreases from -1 to 2. And I want to remind you that when we identify intervals of a function, we always do so using the x-coordinates. Alright, so now let's take a look at where I have positive and negative intervals. So I want to remind you that the positive interval is just all the places where the graph is above the y-axis. And the negative interval is all the places where it is below. So I see that it is positive where it is green. So I am positive here and here. Okay. So I would call that from -2 to 0. And then I would call that from 3 until it goes off the graph, so that is infinity. For my negatives, I'm going to have all of these here. Okay, so I'm going to call that -infinity to -2, and then I'm going to call that 0 to +3. Alright, so I have one less task that I need to do, and that is to identify the max and min of the function. So remember that the maximum represents the highest point of the function. So, and it's relative because we know that this thing goes off the graph for on and on and on forever, right? So the maximum is going to be this point right here. So the name of that point, let me erase it again so we can see it. The name of that point is -1, 4. All right. So the minimum is going to be the lowest point, right? So the lowest point is going to be this point right here. And we're going to call that point +2, -8. Okay, I've been asked to make a bulleted list of all the transformations that have occurred with the function and to be sure to use my correct mathematical notation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what the parent function